Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed representative of the Croatian Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs, members of the Institute's Board of Directors, dear participants of the second European and North American Encyclopedia Conference, dear colleagues. It is our great pleasure to finally welcome you here on the premises of the Miroslav Krleža Institute of Lexicography. This long-awaited event has been postponed on several occasions due to the unfortunate events over the past 2.5 years. But we have now finally managed to gather here in Zagreb to hold this conference, which will tackle many important issues that professionally edited encyclopedias are facing in the digital age. The main goal of this event is to examine the role of encyclopedias in providing access to reliable and verified information of general interest in the user's native language, as well as their role in the preservation of national and cultural identity. We have already opened the floor to discussion on the aforementioned topics at the first European Encyclopedia Conference, which was organized by the Great Norwegian Encyclopedia, the European Parliamentary Research Service, and the Mission of Norway to the European Union, and was held in Brussels in October 2019. The Zagreb Conference, which has brought together editors and publishers from 11 countries, is financially supported by the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of the Republic of Croatia. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Domagoj Knežević, advisor to the Croatian Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, to address the audience.
Ja ću se prvo obratiti na hrvatskom, s obzirom da su tu mediji, pa kasnije na engleskom ću zaželiti vam sreću. Dakle, poštovane uzvanice, poštovani uzvanici, poštovani domaćini. Sve vas srdačno pozdravljam u ime ministra vanjskih i europskih poslova, gospodina Grlića Radmana, koji nažalost danas nije mogao biti ovdje. Što mu je bilo izričito žao, rekao mi je da ovakve stvari on posebno podržava i kao što znate on je posebno zainteresiran za pitanja hrvatske kulture i hrvatske nacionalne baštine. Dear guest, respected host, I warmly greet you all on behalf of the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, Mr. Gordan Grlić Radman. I wish you success in the work of this conference and express great pride that we had the opportunity to support this conference. I wish you a success and a good work in these 3 days of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Knežević. Director General of the Miroslav Krleža Institute of Lexicography and Chief Editor of the Croatian Encyclopedia, Dr. Bruno Kragić, will now give a talk on encyclopedias in the digital age.
It was a sort of an ambitious announcement made by our dear Nataša that I will talk about encyclopedias in digital age. It will be just few notes, maybe notes for our later discussion. First, I have to welcome you on behalf of our Minister of Culture, Ms. Nina Obuljen, who couldn't come, but asked me to convey you her welcomes and her constant support for the encyclopedia idea. Regarding that idea of encyclopedia, I think that we will all agree that we have all witnessed, with more or less sorrow, the passing of the printed general encyclopedias in the last 10 to 15 years. Years of the transition of that specific type of encyclopedia, type which is in itself is the epitome of encyclopedia as such, into the web form, most visible through the global spread of Wikipedia, which became the most used encyclopedic form of today. I say encyclopedic form, not encyclopedia, because the tremendous success of Wikipedia opened up the question about the change of encyclopedic principles and the encyclopedic concept of knowledge. I'm not talking here, obviously, about the changes in the modes of use, about technological changes. Those changes created the possibility to destroy the boundaries of traditional printed encyclopedias, possibilities to constantly update, revise, write, and almost immediately publish new articles. It created the possibilities of a world in which, as Wikipedia founder Jimmy Valesa said, every individual on the planet has free access to the sum of all human knowledge. But what is knowledge? Is every information equal or equally valuable, with superficial and unreliable on equal basis with proven and reliable? Does not verified knowledge lose the importance? Is the main goal of encyclopedia the first-hand information about more or less everything? Is the main goal of encyclopedia the accumulation of seemingly boundless multitude of details about one topic? Or is the goal of encyclopedia not only to present knowledge, but to order it, or even more, to reorder it? The goal that requires to know what is to put inside and in which form, and what remains irrelevant. For online users, we are, I think, used to it. Almost everything is relevant and has to be put in encyclopedia. But is that kind of work encyclopedia at all? Umberto Eco, in his reflections about Wikipedia, made a distinction between the thing that benefit the poor and the thing that benefit the rich, where the terms poor and rich have no connotation in terms of money, but in cultural, intellectual ones. Eco says, the internet is good for rich and hurt the poor. While the rich ones search through various informations, the poor one dare pick the first information that arrives. So, for Wikipedia, like all over the internet, the problem is in its very idea of totality, as it retains everything, both false news and real ones. Editorial control, as practiced in Wikipedia, serves up to a certain point, becoming more complicated and fragile as issues become more subtle and difficult. The difference between Wikipedia and traditional verified encyclopedias, never minding are they printed or digital, becomes difference between library and bookstore, or even between library and warehouse of books. Grand ambition of traditional encyclopedia to order and reorder knowledge, to map it, to systemize it, has always been a sort of a bizarre utopian project. But it mattered, as it expressed the idea where encyclopedia was a kind of a substitution for library, which itself was a substitution of knowledge. And knowledge, obviously, and of course, substitute the world, as the world is only the world of our knowledge, which knowledge is contained in books that are all contained in one great book, the Universal Encyclopedia. Asking frequently myself, is that idea still alive? I can at least hope so, given that in these difficult times, small bunch of some eccentric professional encyclopedists managed to meet and hopefully exchange their own ideas of encyclopedia. And dear guests, dear colleagues, dear friends, I welcome all to the Lexicographic Institute Miroslav Krleža. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno, for these very nice words. And last but not least, Institute's director, Dr. Filip Hameršak, will discuss several points concerning the historical development of Croatian encyclopedistics and the need of European and North American cooperation in the field. Filip.
Distinguished guests, respected participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for the Miroslav Krleža Lexicographic Institute and also a great honor, privilege for me to host the second European and North American Encyclopedia Conference. In spite of the coronavirus disease and the still visible impact of the 2020 earthquakes, I hope your stay in the city of Zagreb, the Croatian capital, will be pleasant and relaxing. Equally, I hope the conference activities, both official and unofficial, will be fruitful concerning the planned topics, and that, at least during these short 3 days, we will hear no more grim news from embattled Ukraine. This year, the Republic of Croatia is celebrating the 30th anniversary of its international recognition. However, the recognition itself did not stop the fighting, which ended only in 1995. The 5 years of the conflict were also characterized by moments of misunderstanding on the side of countries that are now Croatia's partners and friends, including the arms embargo that seriously hindered defense against the well-equipped attackers. Although the aggressors were eventually repulsed, the traces of war are still present in landscapes and buildings, in the economy, and probably the most important, in people's hearts. Although the guns have long gone silent, cultural wars of a sort, those concerning competing interpretations of recent history, are still raging. Moreover, the interpretations fight over modern and medieval history as well, and often tend to blur the line towards what is an established fact and what is not. Somebody might think this is a new postmodern development, but that's not the case. Such disputes, including also matters of state organization, language and religion, i.e. of cultural and national identity, were recorded within the Croatian context already in the early 19th century, and even before that. Naturally, encyclopedias, both domestic and foreign, belong to this kind of cultural or information battlefield, and that's what many of their founding fathers had in mind. Unsurprisingly, even if we have in mind only the recent, professional, entirely benevolent encyclopedia editing, free of bias and prejudice, it is practically impossible to escape relying on some false statements. Therefore, in my opinion, the value of the European and North American Encyclopedia Conference initiative is not only in tackling the questions of how to make the encyclopedic content more findable, usable, or influential, but also of how to make it more trustworthy, because of the inherent truth value of both its factual statements and interpretations. Obviously, apart from recruiting renowned, dedicated contributors, which is often not an easy task, a kind of further transnational coordination between editorial boards of various encyclopedias could be established concerning the exchange of text or even advisory peer reviewing of selected topics of global, regional, or national scope. For instance, 30 years ago, my senior colleagues were frustrated by inadequate information on Croatia in some of the world's most influential encyclopedias. In that vein, a project was instigated in order to analyze such deficiencies and to propose amendments. With the advance of the internet and with other improvements in the circulation of knowledge, things started to improve and are generally much better now, albeit further work could and should be done. Among other things, the Institute's periodical, Studia Lexicographica, may serve for covering the themes of common interest, such as theory and history of particular encyclopedic projects in English and other commonly used languages. Fortunately, contrary to the distorted picture of Croatia as a Balkan nation invented in the 1990s, most accounts now point to the variety of cultural influences, including the Central European and Mediterranean as more important ones. Similarly, the well-attested medieval Croatian kingdom is seldom overlooked, and it is mostly recognized that, in spite of all the entanglements, its core elements at least continue to exist within the Croatian-Hungarian Union and within the complex framework of the Habsburg monarchy all the way until 1918, and although on different grounds, were also incorporated to a degree in both the monarchist and communist Yugoslavia. Of course, more and more adequate attention has also been given to the geography and natural heritage of Croatia, its economic and cultural life, prominent people, etc. Be it as it may, standing before you today, we are also standing on the shoulders of our predecessors, energetic men and women that confronted many obstacles. The first Croatian printed vocabulary dictionaries originated in the 16th century, and were intended for improving understanding between Adriatic seafarers and among the intellectual elite of the Habsburg monarchy. Biographical dictionaries soon followed. Despite being reduced by Ottoman invasions to the reliquia reliquiarum, or remnants of the remnants, the Croatian lands during the 17th and 18th centuries, under supreme Habsburg and Venetian rule, harbored notable individuals dedicated to the early modern ideas of nation building, such as common history and literature and standard language. But contrary to the development trends in Western and Northern Europe, no general encyclopedias had been printed. Following the fall of Venice in 1997 and the brief episode of Napoleon, Croatia and Slavonia and Dalmatia and Istria were brought together under Habsburg rule only in the early 19th century. Starting in the 1830s, and the beginning of the broader cultural political activity of national integration, newspapers, journals, civil associations, and state-owned or state-sponsored institutions dedicated to culture and science started to flourish. However, in spite of rather well-established subscriber circles and individual patronage, and not counting several biographical dictionaries, the first multi-volume general encyclopedia in the Croatian language appeared only in the 1880s, launched by two high school professors in the city of Osijek. Despite their enthusiasm, and probably also due to political obstructions, they gathered only a small circle of associates, quitting the project at letter G. The first Croatian national encyclopedic volume, published in Hungarian and German in years 1901 and 1902, as part of the famous series Die Österreichische-Ungarische Monarchie in Wort und Bild, had somewhat more success, but was almost completely forgotten after 1918. Edited by the renowned Izo Kršnjavi, former Croatian Minister of Education and Culture, the volume was entitled Croatia and Slavonia, which were implied to be of equal rank to the Kingdom of Hungary. The scope significantly changed in the new Yugoslav state, and 4 volumes of the national Serbian, Croatian, Slovenian encyclopedia were published in Zagreb in the 1920s. Edited by renowned Serbian historian Stanoje Stanojević, this was another private edition, and many topics were left for a never-published supplement. Also, the Croatian material was covered with uneven quality, and some of the controversial articles were written exclusively by Serbian authors. Thus, when the first single-volume general lexicons appeared in the mid-1930s, they were published independently in Zagreb and Belgrade, and they too were private editions. Towards the end of the 1930s, work on a new multi-volume general Croatian encyclopedia was launched by high school professor and Catholic intellectual Mate Ujević. Having developed an unparalleled promotional activity, the initiative was soon supported by the Bennett of Croatia and later by the independent state of Croatia. The encyclopedia was largely unaffected by wartime propaganda and distanced itself from the values of the new European order. So some hoped that work on it may continue even after letter E, but the post-war communist authorities dissolved the Ujević Institute. Finally, our Institute of Lexicography was established by a Yugoslav government decree in October 1950 as the sole federal institution based in Zagreb. Only in 1972 was the institute taken under the wing of the Republic of Croatia. Its founder and first director, the erudite writer Miroslav Krleža, remained at the institute's helm until his death in 1981, balancing between his personal and national strivings and the changing political circumstances. Established primarily in order to publish a more successful encyclopedia of Yugoslavia than Stanojević's, the institute completed its first edition in the early 1970s, but the completion of the second edition, carefully elaborated according to the largely decentralized federal constitution of 1974, was prevented by differences between the Republican and the provincial editorial boards and eventually the collapse of the Yugoslav state. Adherence to similar constraints especially a Marxist approach to social sciences and the part of the humanities, was a necessary condition for many of the Institute's publications, including the free editions of multi-volume General Encyclopedia. But this influence was only marginally apparent in the enormous specialized program. Furthermore, under Krleža's protection, some of the otherwise politically proscribed experts continued their careers in the Institute. The most prominent among them, the mentioned polymath Ujević, even became the Institute's chief organizer. Among other things, he managed to complete an almost comprehensive bibliography of texts published in Yugoslav periodicals until 1945, with over 2 million units, and the first edition of the Maritime Encyclopedia. After Krleža's death, the Institute was severely criticized by the regime for its Croatian biographical dictionary being not Marxist enough, for bourgeois nostalgia, etc. Some of its intellectuals were temporarily silenced, but nevertheless continued their internal discussions toward pluralistic liberalization. For instance, since 1990, 3 members of Croatian parliament originated from the Institute's 60 lexicographers. Even one of them even serving as a Speaker of the House of the Representatives, the other as a Minister of Culture. All in all, the state independence and democratization of the 1990s brought new possibilities and new challenges to Croatian encyclopedistics. Entering the Lexicographic Institute at the turn of the century, my generation was happy enough to be spared many political and social upheavals. But the world is constantly changing in so many ways that, of course, demand finding new solutions. Deeply believing that this conference will also serve such a purpose, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you a good start. Thank you all, Nataša.
I would like to thank once again to all the speakers. And we have arrived to the last part of this introductory session, so allow me briefly to lead you through the conference program. Today, the conference will continue with a keynote speech, Knowledge Supply Chains in an Age of Truth Decay, the Role of Verified Encyclopedias, given by Naya Benson, Senior Policy Analyst from the European Parliament Liaison Office in Washington, D.C., which will be followed by the presentations of new participating encyclopedias from Bulgaria and Slovakia. After the lunch break from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m., we'll have a panel discussion on the activities and achievements of each participating encyclopedia in the past 3 years. And we will also address experiences, obstacles, and challenges that we have faced in the era of global crisis, given the COVID-19 pandemic and armed conflicts. Tomorrow we'll start at 10:30 with a second panel discussion, which will address the findability of encyclopedic content, as well as the usability of encyclopedias in various target groups. Furthermore, given the increased availability of alternative online sources, we will discuss how encyclopedias can contribute to building trust in reliable online sources of information and how to ensure their sustainability. After tomorrow's lunch break from 2:30 to 5 p.m., the last panel of the conference will be dedicated to a number of topics, such as the exploration of possibilities of recognition of encyclopedias as scientific publications, and the possibilities for collaboration and networking among national general encyclopedias. In addition, the perspective on future developments of encyclopedias will be discussed. The last day of the conference, Saturday, October the 8th, will be dedicated to the study trip to Krk Island, an impressive site of Croatian cultural heritage. The rest of the conference program will be held in the meeting room 101 that you have already seen, just outside the lobby next to the main stairway. Last but not least, I would like to mention that online attendance for colleagues who could not be here with us today has been provided, and I'm especially pleased that our Ukrainian colleagues will contribute to the conference with via video recording that they sent yesterday. With that being said, I would like to conclude this introductory session and to invite you for a coffee break. Thank you all for coming.